welcome to my YouTube channel.
Isn't it satisfying clapping too?
Jeez, it's been what? A month? This is the longest we've taken off YouTube work, anything, but it was so necessary.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was blissful. Not really.
Yeah, but we're happy to be back. We got all the messages. We appreciate the love. We appreciate the concern, and we're back with another video.
We're back, and we're back for good-ish until the next
break.
Until the next
breaks
break.
are necessary, guys. We
Yeah,
encourage,
for sure.
especially when life happens, because life happens, and sometimes you need to just sit back. In case you didn't know why we went off Wisdom and Wellness, just a quick recap: we got our laptop stolen, our cars broken into, and we just didn't have any work, and then just a whole lot of other stuff happened, and we decided, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe God wants us to be still,
to relax a bit,
and that's what we did, and it worked out for the good.
Yeah, no, April was just filled with
rest.
A lot of rest and a lot of inconveniences.
But we're back now, and today's video, I was studying the book of Psalm. This is actually based on a conversation we had in bed.
Is it with me?
Yes,
You're
of course.
You're always stealing my stuff
no,
and making
it's
it
because
a
we
video.
have such good conversations, and we had a conversation.
Which one is this? Because we have a
about
lot of
David.
conversations.
We spoke about David. Brendan,
oh
yes.
We
spoke.
This is so good.
We spoke about David, and you mentioned something, and you said David did so many terrible things, right? Yeah. Yet God still called him a man after his own heart, right? We came to the conclusion that we think one of the reasons why God might have called him that is because he was able to be honest with God, whether his honesty was holy, comfortable or not, but he was honest with God, and he was able to go back to God and say, hey God, I messed up, I did this, but I still need your help.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, like I said in this conversation in bed, is that we like to glorify like certain parts of scripture without the context of it. And everybody's always like, I'm like David, I have a heart for God, or but it's what does that mean?
Yeah,
what does it mean to have a heart for God? And when you look at David's life and you look at all the things he did, you recognize very quickly that he was not perfect. Yeah. But he was honest with God. And so maybe that's what God meant when God said, that he has a heart after him. You know what I mean? Yeah. That he was, because like this is what I always say, God created us, so God knows everything about us. Yeah. And the only thing that we can truly give to God is our honesty. Sure. Because the only thing he's given to us that is in our control is free will. Sure. And the only thing you can give up out of free will is honesty. Wow. That's the only thing we can give God that he cannot have otherwise. Sure. You understand?
Yeah. He can't choose that for us.
He can't choose for us to be honest with him. Yeah. He can see everything that we're doing. He sees everything that we're doing because he sees everything and he knows everything. But the only thing that he cannot control us to do is for us to come to him and say, God, you know what? This is who I am. Yeah. This is what I've done. This is the true me. This is how I feel. Yeah. And sometimes we try to hide our true selves. Yeah. How we're feeling. If you're feeling angry, you don't want to feel angry because you don't want to disappoint God.
And it's just like,
God knows that you feel that way. But he's not going to force you to say, God, this is how I feel. I feel like you're not there for me. Yeah. Or I feel like I can't find you and I don't see what you're doing in my life. And this kind of honesty is what God looks for in our lives.
Sure. Can you open my screenshot?
Oh yeah, here's a tweet.
And to kick off from that, what today's conversation is about is, I wrote this tweet, and this came from a sincere place, and it says, take time out, be sad, hurt, heal, whatever you need. But put an expiration date and remember who you are and who you belong to. Yes. And we're speaking about vulnerability, how to be vulnerable with God. Exactly. And that's when I read Psalm 143 to come up with 3 points on how to be vulnerable with God. Number 1, pour your heart out in honesty. And this is based on Psalm 143 verse 1. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Listen to my supplications. Answer me in your faithfulness and in your righteousness. And do not enter into judgment with your servant. For in your sight no man living is righteous or justified. And I'm going to just also jump to verse 4. Therefore, my spirit is overwhelmed and weak within me, wrapped in darkness. And that's David going to God and saying, I am overwhelmed. Please don't judge me. This is how I'm feeling. And that's the first point to being vulnerable with God. Start by saying, Lord, this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah, look, honesty, you have to open up. And if you can't be honest with anyone else, at least be honest with God.
Sure.
Because being honest with God is really being honest with yourself. And you cannot move forward until you've been honest with yourself.
Sure.
So I think
That
you
is so
have
true.
you have to pour your heart out, because you will always feel judged otherwise. You know what I mean? Like because you will know that, man, actually I'm not being real.
Yeah.
Because so be honest with God, and in turn being honest with yourself.
Yeah. I also wrote here, hide nothing, lay it all down, and don't try act strong for God. We like trying to act strong for God.
God doesn't need us to be strong.
He doesn't need us to. He just needs us to pour our hearts out. Yeah. Second point, ask and listen for guidance. This is based on verse 10. He says, teach me to do your will so that I may please you. For you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. Now, this comes with knowing what to do next. Sometimes we rush to saying, okay, I poured my heart out, it's time to do the next thing. Or, okay, let me go tell this one. But after being vulnerable with God and opening up, then taking time out and saying, okay, God, what next? Do you need me to be still? Do you need me to take time out? Or do you need me to go back into the battlefield? Because sometimes some situations in life require you to say, you know what, let's put a bandage on this. We have to keep moving in the season. But some seasons, sometimes it requires for you to actually be still, sit back and say, okay, Lord, what are you trying to say? How are we healing? Or how are we attacking this? How are we moving forward from this place we're at?
Yeah. 100%. I mean, a lot of times we want things to be, like you said it so well, it's not always this or that. There's no template that you can actually put down and say, this is how you deal when you find yourself in a position where you have no strength, or, you know, things aren't going the way you want. There's no template you can put and say, everyone's got to follow this. It requires you to have that relationship with God, to understand, you know, what should I be doing? And a lot of times I find that to understand what you should do next, you should know what you were doing before.
Okay.
And understand from what you were doing before, what was in the purpose of God, you know, out of all those things. And I mean, David's always a great example, because David was a musician, but he wasn't always a musician. But his music was always a part of his life.
Sure.
So figure that out. What is the core thing that is aligned in God's purpose? Because when you go back to that, you'll be able to find your next direction. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I think in hearing the voice of God, people always say, how do I hear God in that stillness? My favorite song is by Dante Bowe, Voice of God. And he was talking about, listening to an interview where he wrote that from. And when he wrote that song, his grandfather had just passed away, and it was raining outside. And that's literally the opening line of the song. And so to say, God speaks in so many different ways. We just have to hear him. And sometimes he speaks through people, the closest people around you. But because we've familiarized ourselves with things, we're no longer in the moment. We miss the voice of God. Sometimes God speaks through songs. Sometimes he speaks.
Sometimes even through moments.
I think especially through pain, through so many things.
I think to be honest, for us this past month, the reason it was so hard is because God was speaking, but he was speaking through pain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's like sometimes that's what it takes for you to hear God.
Yeah.
To say, that's what you say.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise the message wouldn't be as real for you.
Yeah.
And wouldn't have as much meaning.
Absolutely.
If he said it like through a promotion.
Yeah. Just like,
which we all want God to speak through things that speak to us, but sometimes he speaks through things that really get through to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. You're good. You're hardcore today.
The thing is, I'm fresh from it.
Okay.
Because I've just dealt with a lot this past month, and a lot of loss and a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But what's keeping me, like waking me up every morning, is understanding that there's a purpose to that pain.
Absolutely.
And that if I do not learn the lessons of the pain, then the pain was in vain. Yo, sing a rhyme, no rhyme. It's too much.
But that is so true. Then
if you don't learn,
it's in vain.
it's like I felt the pain and I got nothing out of it.
Wow.
And it's like, what was the point?
Yeah.
You know? So it's so, for me, it's so fresh and it's so clear that there is sometimes when God speaks to us through pain and he carries that message, and that it's so deep that you know that you have to learn the lesson and you have to do what you have to do, and you have to be ready for the season that you are entering.
Yeah.
And you have to be strong. And like you said, if you need to put a bandage, you have to put a bandage.
Yeah.
If you need to get some sort of anesthesia, what, get it.
Slap it on.
Get a drip.
Yeah.
But
do what's required of you in that time.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the last point. It's always remember what God has done before. Meditate on his goodness. Funny enough, yesterday I was listening bits and pieces, and I tried to finish it off this morning because of the kids. Pastor Furtick, and he was saying it's always been in you. And he speaks about Jacob, and he says when Jacob first ran away, when he was running away from his brother, he ran away out of the will of God to Bethlehem, right? Mm-hmm. But he still made it. And then he came back to the promised land, the land of Canaan, and then his sons killed the people, and now Jacob was in danger. And God now says to him, go back to Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. And it's like now God's asking him to go back to that very same place where he ran to out of disobedience. And Furtick comes back and he says the reason why in his thoughts, the reason why God might have taken him there is that sometimes God takes you back to that place of pain to remember what it felt like so that you can make it through again this time. Mm-hmm. With that being said, going back to those moments of overcoming, to remind yourself of what God has done. Sometimes you need to sit back and reminisce. I think there's a reason why we have memory. We need to go back to those places and remember, to the point where he made us do an exercise and said, close your eyes. Think of that one thing you didn't think you'd survive. And there were so many things that came to mind. And then you realize, I made it. Mm-hmm. I made it. And we tend to forget what we have made it through, especially in moments of difficulty and pain. And we think, oh, it's over for me. But going back and meditating on the goodness of God and where he's brought you from and thinking back of where you were, I think that's a good place also for vulnerability, because it reminds you that this is not eternal. Nothing is forever. It is just a moment. And like you said, learn the lesson.
That's the only way you can have perspective.
Yeah.
Because perspective, I guess, this would be my definition. So don't quote me. Perspective would be the past, the present, and the future.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be perspective.
Absolutely.
So if you're just living in the moment, which again, we should do, and there is benefits to doing that, and I definitely encourage it, but you don't have a greater perspective.
I hear you.
So all you're doing is you're living right now and you're going through what you're going through. The same way, I'll make an easy example. When you're in grade 10 seems hard.
Yeah.
When you're in grade 11, grade 10 seems easier.
Yeah.
When you're in grade 11 seems hard. When you're in matric, apparently matric is easier than in grade 11. But anyway, that's not the point. The point would be whenever you look back on something, the way you see it and the way you view it in retrospect will be different to as you are going through
in the moment.
And so as you're going through stuff, it helps condition your mind to retrospect and to look forward so that you have perspective.
Sure.
So you have an idea of where you'd like to go and you have an idea of where you've been. So then it informs whatever struggle you're going through right now for you to have strength and to know how to deal with it, because you have all this information that you've gone through in the past. Like, for instance, David killed the lion and then he killed Goliath. Yeah. So it's like...
But before even getting to Goliath, he knew that he had conquered a beast.
Exactly.
Before.
So he had some sort of he had a bit of an idea of how much strength he has. And it's the same thing.
It's important to mention that it still doesn't take away the moment and the pain of the moment. You still need to be vulnerable enough to experience the moment, to experience the fear, but also with remembering that you have conquered before and that this is not the end of it all.
Yes, exactly. And it goes back to what we always say about Nuri, for instance. Nuri has this thing where if she hurts herself, well, we've taught her to do this where we blow wherever it hurts.
Yeah.
And as soon as we blow, she says, it's better. She says it's better.
Yeah.
And we used to laugh about it and say it's not really better because that couldn't have fixed the problem. But we realized it did fix a problem. It didn't fix the problem we thought it was fixing, but it fixed the mental problem. And so that's what perspective does, is that it might not give you physical strength,
relief,
but it gives you mental strength.
Yeah.
And if you have mental strength, then at least half the battle is won.
As a man thinks, so he becomes.
So it's hard enough for you to beat whatever you're dealing with, the pain that you're struggling with, or the vulnerability you're trying to achieve, just on a physical level. And then having to deal with that mentally as well, it just makes the mountain so much bigger.
Yeah.
So if you at least beat that mountain, then you have a so much better chance to beat the physical pain or vulnerability that you're trying to expose or be in.
Sure, you've said a mouthful. And basically, that was today's message. It's a vulnerability. I think we're in a space, and I'd like us to actually stay here, to always remember, to always be in a space of vulnerability with God, because I think sometimes things just build up and then it gets to a point where it just blows up and you're just now forced to be really, really vulnerable with God. So it's not always easy, but
it's not. I think sometimes also people watch our lives and what we put out on social media, and they have a very one-sided opinion of our lives. Like, we don't go through things, like we don't deal with things, and we've just made a conscious decision to always make it positive whenever we interact on a public platform, because there wouldn't be any need for, I mean, I don't see what good could come out of us just bleeding on people and being depressed on all over social media all the time. Not to say that we don't go through those moments, but we do, and it's just that our mindset has to stay positive so we can do. And another thing that I think is important is that I think everyone should remember that God does not require you to be perfect to use you. That in fact God works better in your imperfections.
Absolutely.
So allow God to use you wherever you are in your life at any given point. And I think we just wanted to make this video because we just honestly wanted you guys to know that we're okay. Nothing's wrong, because people get worried. But we just took a hiatus. You know? And because we needed it, because we needed to refuel, because we value the work that we do on social media so much, that we want to do it, like Mpoomy said, we don't want to bleed on people. We don't want to do it, Ganti, I've got pain and I'm putting out my pain on people through my posts. And, you know, we have a level of influence that God has gifted us with. So we want to protect that and make sure that whatever we're doing, whether it's Free to Worship, which is coming back, by the way, or it's Mpoomy's YouTube channel, these 20-minute videos, they should matter. And if it touches at least one person who can relate, then we've done our job. And it's just also it's nice to be back.
It is really nice
in
to
our
be
earth
back.
colors.
You
know, we came through with the swag today.
We did.
Okay.
But it's really nice to be back, and you're absolutely right. We never ever want to bleed on people. We really love what we do. We are blessed to do what we do, and we're blessed with having a level of influence, and we have to be responsible for that. But most importantly, we have to be responsible for the condition of our hearts,
and
our well-being, our honesty, and our marriage, and our family. And you know what? God took a break. Jesus, he took a lot of praying breaks. Because life gets hectic. But we just wanted to encourage you that you're never ever alone. You're not the only one going through stuff. And when you are going through stuff, it's okay. Just be vulnerable to God and take it from David. Go read Psalm 143. Number 1, pour your heart out sincerely. 2, ask and listen for guidance. And number 3, always remember what God has done. He hasn't left you. He won't forsake you. And there's purpose in pain. But you need to decide what you make of that pain.
Sure.
We love you and we're happy to be back. God bless you. Tell your neighbor and your mother and your uncle to watch this video.
Sharp.